Hello, I'm Mr Dilly and welcome to Mr Dilly's History Live. We're coming to you today from the Petrie Museum here in the heart of London, and we're going to be asking the question, how did daily beliefs shape everyday life and death in ancient Egypt? So yes, I'm here at the Petrie Museum in London, and it's my pleasure for you to meet one of the curators here at the Petrie Museum. Over here we have Amanda. Welcome to Mr Dilly's History Live. Lovely to have you here. So Amanda's going to be showing you around this incredible place. As I said, 80,000 different ancient artifacts here today, and we're going to dive straight in and have a look at this one down here. So Amanda, tell us what we're looking at here first of all.
Well, we're actually looking at a balustrade. Now that's a fancy word for saying part of a staircase. So it's the wall of part of a staircase. And it's not the fact that it's part of a staircase that's so interesting, it's what's on it that's so interesting. And you can see sort of two figures. There's one that's full, that's got its head and everything, but then there's another figure and we can't see the head of that one. It's an unusual shaped sort of person and everything. This is actually from a place called Amarna, and it was the shape there is actually Pharaoh, who is Akhenaten, which is a fairly unusual pharaoh.
Yeah, so this is a character that I don't know if you've ever heard of. The Tutankhamun is the famous pharaoh that as all schools do, or maybe Ramesses II, you might have heard of him. But this guy over here is actually really well known. You might not have heard him, but he's a very, very interesting and unusual and fairly controversial figure. Tell us a bit about why he's shaped like this and why he's such a kind of controversial figure, because he really is, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. We're not entirely certain. Usually when the king, so Pharaoh, the rulers, put forward images of themselves, they look in sort of their best state. It's like they've got their best filter, they look like their most perfect person. Probably not really like what they look like. But he presents himself in a really unusual way. So his body has a very unusual shape, as you can see there.
Zooming on that again.
The big sort of legs, and also you can't see there, but his head is also really sort of bulbous and unusual looking. So we don't know, was he presenting himself as he was, or was there some reason? Now, one reason that we connect with is he did something really unusual. So up until him and after him, in ancient Egypt, there was many gods. There were gods that you would talk to for every occasion.
Thousands of them.
Exactly. As you and I'm sure you all know.
The ancient Egyptians worshipped over 2,000 gods and goddesses. The gods created the universe and maintained order, but they were also involved in everyday life and needed to be worshipped so that life could be kept in balance. Some of the most famous gods were Ra, the god of the sun; Isis, the protector goddess of Egypt, women and children; Osiris, the god of the underworld and rebirth; Thoth, the bird-headed god of knowledge and wisdom; Horus, god of the sky and protector of the pharaohs; and Anubis, the jackal-headed god of death and embalming.
Akhenaten actually decided there would just be one god. He's the first
And
one.
what did he decide the god was?
So it was unusual because it was the sun.
So is this what this is then?
Well, exactly. These are actually little rays. So, I mean, we've only got a part of this, as often happens the case in archaeology. We don't have the whole thing.
And what are they at the end of that? What are they at the end of
they're
these
little
rays?
hands. So the sun would have been up here in this inscription, and then there are hands that reach down from the sun, like as if they're reaching down to you. You know, like you can touch them.
Yeah.
And this is an image that we get a lot.
So what's he saying? He's saying he is the sun? He is the sun.
He's the direct connection, I think.
So he's like one. He's one with the sun, something like that. Is it? That's what it is, or not?
Different from when there was the many gods, because it was the priests who were sort of more the ones who helped us to speak. So this is also, it's a political change here, because he's effectively cutting out these powerful people.
But this is true. So obviously today's question is about how beliefs affected life and death and people's daily life in ancient Egypt. So here you've got them all believing in all these thousands of gods, and there's a lot of famous ones which you would have heard of. And then you've got this guy comes along, Akhenaten, who basically says, no, get out of that.
Here is one that we think could be his, part of his face, or his queen. We just don't quite know.
So tell me who his queen was, because they might have heard of it.
Well, the queen was Nefertiti, and you can see there's other little images of parts of faces
This is amazing,
as
this
well.
carving here, isn't it?
So at Amarna, we actually found what we sort of call the sculptor's workshop, because of course there weren't shops in ancient Egypt. You had craftspeople making things and so forth. So he had a sculptor and craftspeople who would do all of this. And we found what sort of, not me personally, but archaeologists found what looked like they could have been trial pieces in terms of working out what the face would be shaped like.
But here we have Amarna here, so this is the thing. So not only is he coming along and he's basically saying, nah, forget about all the other gods, there's just this god, and basically I'm kind of at one with this god. And what's Amarna? What does he also do?
So he makes his own capital.
He
moves to a whole new area that there had never been anything built there before, and he builds palaces.
Wow.
He builds, places that people live, that craftspeople live, and so on. You may have seen, we don't have it here, but the Nefertiti bust. Now that's that very famous statue of Nefertiti. Yes, and the headdress that comes from the sculptor's.
Wow.
Quarters there.
That's all at the same, obviously at the same time.
Correct, and Amarna as well, and that's his queen. So that's where people might know that one.
And now over to the studio to meet my special guest. Joining me today for Mr Dilly History live guest spot is Iszi Lawrence. She is a historian, she is a broadcaster, she is a presenter as well, and author of many children's novels, including the ancient Egyptian themed The Cursed Tomb. Today also we are tackling the big question: how did beliefs shape life and death in ancient Egypt? Welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. I'm enjoying it already. So this is
fabulous. So here we're going to kick you off with a fun question, Izzy. Okay, so if you had a time machine yourself, it's in your books, I know, but if you had a time machine yourself and could spend one day in ancient Egypt, where would you go and why? Any thoughts about that?
I mean, I'd like to see Akhenaten because I think he's weird. I think Akhenaten is a weird man. But I think I would like to meet Imhotep. You see him in some films, you see Imhotep, but Imhotep is credited as being the architect of the Great Pyramids, those massive pyramids in Giza. Yeah. He's the dude who designed them. So I'd like to just go back to like him when he's just doing, the big pyramid, Cthulhu's pyramid in Giza. I think that'd be good.
Right, so here we go. Let's get into this, and we try to answer our question as much as we can today. Children watching, they're all kind of interested in the Egyptian gods. They're a colourful, wonderful bunch, but there's an awful lot of them. There's the famous ones, which we'll talk a little bit about, but there's also lots of other ones as well. Why were there? How many gods do we think there were, and why were there so many? I know.
How many? The trouble is they will change as well. So Amun and Ra sort of come together, become Amun Ra or Amun Re. So they all change. We're talking a period of 3,000 years of all having kind of the same religion. Yeah. So at the start, their roles change all the way through to basically Cleopatra, who's the last of the pharaohs. Yeah. So it all does change. And so all of these gods, they start off having one job, they go to different jobs. Like you have Thoth, who's my favourite, because I like to say Thoth. It's a good Thoth. It's good, Thoth.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, what does Thoth like on his barbecue? Thothages. We like Thoth.
He's the god. That's a good one. I'm having that joke.
Of the moon. He's the god of the moon, but he's also the god of wisdom, and he's the god of pottery, he's the god of Memphis. He does all of these different things over that 3,000 years. The cool thing about him, though, is he has the head of an ibis. So he has a big, long nose, like that.
For the big sort of statues of the gods and stuff, are they things... I know they had, obviously, statues outside and the statues outside temples and stuff, but the main, if you like, the gods themselves, how they were seen in their sort of statue form, would everyday people have seen them? Because would they sort of hidden away in temples, or would they have seen them everyday people?
They're hidden in temples, so the priests see them every day because they've got to obviously wash them and give them their offerings and everything else. But there'll be festivals where they'll be paraded, and depending on the god is how they're paraded. Usually, the way to get about in ancient Egypt by boat. You go up and down the Nile. So really, your gods all going to do it by boat. So you'll have a boat carried by people
on the boats, did they, or not?
Yeah. You'll have a little statue. But also, like, if you get in trouble with the law, right? We got evidence of this is that the people used to go around, the elders used to go around with the god from the local temple on their back. Like, they would hold it up, and then they'd decide if you were guilty, because the god would either, bow at you or shake like that, depending if you were guilty of the crime or not. So this was actually a way that they...
Obviously, the people holding it up weren't moving at all then. It was
no, of course not.
No.
Of course not. They were very fair.
To do with that. It would definitely be the stone statue moving, I think.
Exactly.
The actual pharaoh himself. So a lot of obviously everyone would have heard of pharaohs and the children watching. It kind of roughly means, doesn't it, sort of like the great house or great palace of Ra, the sun god, and Ra changes a lot throughout history as well. And they actually believe that the pharaoh was the kind of the living embodiment of, or Ra was in him or something. There was a sort of a sense that he was descended from Ra.
It's kind of weird.
Is that right?
I like to think of it as basically, you're an Egyptian person, right? You can't talk to the gods. You're not important enough. You're not special. But the pharaoh can. Yeah. And the pharaoh, right, can do everything. So the pharaoh is the only one the gods will listen to. So what the pharaoh does is, like, he's almost above the gods, because he's above all of the gods in terms of the fact that he's the life embodiment of Osiris, right? When he dies, he's going to fulfill the role of Osiris, which basically means he's going to make dawn happen.
Yeah. That's clever, isn't it?
I know, it's clever, isn't it? It's pretty good.
Did he have to do anything for that? It just happened
naturally. Oh yeah, he had to fight a big snake. I don't know if we don't know if he had to fight a big snake every night, but he did have to fight a big snake, because when he dies...
That'd get a bit tiring, wouldn't it, every night? I mean, 5 nights a week, but you need a day off, or 2 days off.
You think so, but there's more than one pharaoh, so presumably they can all sort of pitch in.
Yeah, which is fair enough, and which is kind of nice thing.
That he is the most important thing. Without a pharaoh, you have no Egypt. And we have these periods of time in ancient Egyptian history, hundreds of years, where there is no one true pharaoh. There's either no pharaoh or several pharaohs going, I'm the pharaoh, no, I'm the pharaoh, no, I'm the pharaoh. And those we call intermediate periods, and it's known as chaos, where nothing is working very well.
That's really interesting, because they see that figure as the kind of holding it all together. So when you take that away from it, the whole thing...
Without that, no Egypt. And the fact that, in intermediate periods, we get evidence there's things like drought happening, or there's really bad floods happening. And that means that people can't grow food, and people can't, eat properly, and they get really angry. I don't know if you've ever been hangry. I get hangry.
No, I don't. Only every day, about 4.
Okay. Well, exactly. We're all right at the moment, thank goodness. But wait for it, because if you don't get to eat, you get really angry, and then obviously it's much easier to topple over your leaders and smash up temples and that sort of thing if you get angry. And the thing is, the Nile is the real reason that ancient Egypt is the way it is. The reason it stayed the same, and the reason it needed one man in charge, is because it floods every year in a thing called the inundation. And that means that flood water basically spreads out nutrients to all the crops, because you build your little, canals, and you basically have an irrigation system because you're clever, right? You do all of that. Everybody gets their food nice and irrigated, crops grow, it's good, right? You harvest your crops, you eat well, thank the pharaoh, everything's great. But if that flood is late, if that flood doesn't come, then everybody's going, well, what's the pharaoh done? Why aren't the gods pleased with the pharaoh? What's going on with the pharaoh? Have we got a bad pharaoh? Maybe we should have a different pharaoh. What's going on?
The gods and their sort of beliefs, do you think they're all kind of literally, I don't mean physically came out of the Nile, but it sort of came out of the Nile in sense of because like you're saying about Thoth, he's got the ibis head. You've got what are the other ones? Anubis, of course, and you've got the sort of jackal head, sort of scavenger kind of dog.
Well, Anubis is obvious why they thought, because what Anubis does, right, when you die, right, you got to basically know what to do, where you're going, what to say, and Anubis is the guy who helps you, right? And Anubis has got a head of a jackal. Now, if you know anything about jackals, right, they're crepuscular, which is a brilliant word. It means they're awake very early in the morning and very in the evening, when it's kind of twilight is when they like it. And jackals like to hang around where there's graveyards and that sort of thing. So if you go to a necropolis, a graveyard, you'll see little jackals going everywhere. What are they doing? Obviously, they're helping dead people. So there's a logic to why they link certain things to, to certain duties.
Let's go into the bit all the kids love about, you mentioned the afterlife a bit, and then we're going to get into mummification, which we all love.
Loves it.
What do they? So basically, also the ancient Egyptians believed that death wasn't the end; there was an afterlife, and you have to do certain things in order to get into that afterlife. Well, can I just ask you, was that then important that none of the body actually decomposed at all? Could it go?
No.
Could it work? How did that work?
You didn't need all of it. I mean, useless bits like your brain, you can get rid of that because all that does.
I mean, what's the brain for?
Don't need a brain. Exactly. Like every human nowadays, not every human, but most humans nowadays, they think, oh, I'm thinking really hard, and they go, I'm thinking with this. Ancient Egyptians didn't. Ancient Egyptians thought with this. Because think about it, when you're excited, right, when you're really sort of like having to think quickly, your heart speeds up. It's logical. When you feel fear, you don't feel it here, you feel it here. You know, when you fall in love, you will feel the love here, right by your heart. You'll feel it in your gut. You'll feel it in the important bits, not this bit. This bit's just goo. Right? Because basically, if you're an ancient Egyptian, right, you've got to preserve the bits that you'll definitely need. And the heart was the most important, because the heart is so important, you keep it in the body. That is how important
They cleaned it up, didn't they? Then they put it back.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. They obviously, you don't... Well, the thing is... Where the whole idea of mummification comes from, logically, is before there was an ancient Egypt, like right the way back, right at the start of it, you would bury your loved ones in the desert. And if you know anything about the desert, the sand dunes aren't still, right? You bury somebody in the sand dunes blow and move away again. So it might be a year, it might be 2 years, you go back to where you buried your loved one, and suddenly the sands move and they're still there. But because they were in sand, they're all dried out. And they kind of still look alive. Whereas if you put them by the river, they just become bones very, very quickly, because everything goes nom, 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 and all the bacteria does. So basically, you get the idea that, oh, these guys need their body in the afterlife. That's why we can see their body. So let's preserve it. And the thing is, what happens, they need to preserve it because they stop burying people in sand. They stop burying them, first of all, in mastabas, which are just like your normal sort of like tomb with your stone walls and your stone lid. The trouble is with stone, you know, it doesn't let the water and bacteria seep away. And so, like, I don't know if you know what the word sarcophagus means in Greek, do you?
I do not know, no. And I'm sure most of the
sarcophagus means flesh eater. Right?
Does it really?
Because if you put a dead body in stone and put a stone lid on it, it disappears. Because all of your bacteria that lives inside you and helps you day to day just eats your body up. You know, and it goes num 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 num. There's nothing left of you.
Literally disappears.
You know, I mean, you get a few bones maybe, but a good, you know, you got hard-working bacteria will gobble you up. Num num num. So, and which is why, you know, you need to mummify people, because if you put them in a stone thing, they're going to disappear. Therefore, we've got to dry them out, and we know that process takes about 70 days to dry somebody out entirely. And you've got to remove things which are wet and you don't need, like your brain.
Amanda's still with us, so let's just go this way and we'll have a look down. So here we are. Let's go this. What are we going to look at? Should we have a little?
So I spoke about the fact that in tombs you wanted.
Look at this.
You wanted people who might help you in the afterlife.
Yeah, look at that.
So these are actually shabtis, or they sometimes called shabti. There's a difference in the name. So they're actually used for over 2,000 years in ancient Egypt.
So when did they start getting used then? Or the evidence that we've got for this?
Yeah, we've got early evidence, which are these ones that you're seeing down here. And
so these are the oldest at the bottom, yeah?
Yes, these are the oldest.
This is wood, yeah?
And they roughly, that's right, and then they roughly go up to what would be the closest in time to us. So the closest in time to us are what we call the Roman period. So that's sort of more 300 BCE, so 2,300 years ago, whereas some of these earlier ones would have obviously therefore been more 3,000 BCE.
What were they meant to do?
So what we believe is that the thought was that you put one in your tomb and it would come back to life and it would work for you in the afterlife. We're talking about not just ordinary people. These would have been high class as well as royalty people who were rich enough to be able to afford to get these, because there's no shops to go buy these things at, but also probably who had servants as well themselves. So the idea is that they would come back to life for you and work for you in the afterlife. Now initially, and we see these ones down here, they're a little bit more unique, and they are made of wood and so forth. you only just had a one or a two, or a few in your tomb.
Are they? Each of them would come to life at the same time in the same day and do that?
Don't know because I haven't been there.
Have you not been there? Have you been there? I've never been there.
So I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. The other, but just for that quick question, is that basically, can you get these in our life today? Because that would be handy.
Where the sizes become maybe a bit more uniform, some smaller and so forth, we actually now get sort of a rule about there would be 401 in a tomb. Now, any idea on the 401 where that number might come from? So it's 365.
So this is the number of shabtis?
Yes, the number of shabtis in tomb.
Okay.
So it becomes 365, so one for every day of the year. So this might answer your question as to when they come to life. And then for every 10, you had a supervisor or a boss. And you can see the supervisors. Do you see there's a little sort of triangle that comes to the front, or up here, there's a little sort of triangle at the front of the skirt area.
Oh, here. Oh, yeah.
Do you see?
That way. You see one? You see that one? Yeah.
So that was a supervisor shabti. So you'd then have 365. For every 10, you had a boss. And then it adds up to 401. So
that's amazing, isn't it?
And then we round the corner here and we have some beautiful.
So coffin case of, how do I say, Neri Tizit Nifa.
Yes, well done.
Neri Tizit Nifa. If you've got any other suggestions, children, you can write in. I have no idea. So this lady here, it says here, she came from a rich priestly family at Thebes, as they say?
Yes, Thebes.
And died about 700 BC. Yeah, tell me a little bit what you know about this.
Well, I mean, what is so spectacular here, and the reason we know that name is the name will be here on the inscription. So, these were the coffins that would have been on the top of a mummy. We don't have any human remains, mummified human remains here in the Petrie collection, but this was a coffin. You can see the decoration.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Which is images, but then we also get rows of hieroglyphs. Have a look. I say to you, are they up and, are they written in columns, or are they written in horizontal register? And in fact, those ones are in columns. But have a look in here, because, wow, we get a variety here. You see, we've got some that are in this horizontal register, and then we move to the columns and so forth. This one, as you can see, is not as in good a quality. You could see the other one was lacquered and quite shiny and pretty well intact. This one is a lot more decayed.
It's a Dynasty 21, so about 1069 to 969 BC. So it's a bit older. Yeah, about sort of 300, maybe 400 years older.
But you can see also those images on the inside as well as the outside the whole way.
And back with Amanda in just a moment. Now over to Eddie the Embalmer in the Embalmer's Workshop for a little bit of live mummification.
Oh, hello, darling. How are you? Good morning from me and hello from him. Nice to see you all and welcome to the Embalmer's Workshop. Let's have a look at this fella here, shall we, darlings? Okay, now let's get down to some screamy stuff. Welcome, I say, to the place of embalming, which we call the wabbit or the wabbit. Not a rabbit. We don't know what rabbits are. A wabbit, darlings. We're gonna have some fun today. Ooh, darlings. Anyway, I am the chief embalmer, darlings, and today we're all gonna learn about mummifying and preserving a dead body, darlings. Oh my God, we're gonna have so much fun. Okay, now, all us ancient Egyptians, we believe in the afterlife. Death is not the end, darling. Don't know. Just another junction in the life of a soul. And speaking of soul, we believe that everybody, darlings, has not just one, not just two, but 3 souls. Oh yeah.
The ancient Egyptians believed that every person's soul had 3 parts. Firstly, the ka, which was the life force of a person, which remained with them from birth to death. Then, the ba, the spirit of the person's personality, which can move around after death. And finally, the ak, the glorified soul, which survived death and was only allowed for those people who were worthy because they were good people from their past lives.
To ensure all these three spirits survive after death, darling. So that is why we mummify somebody. If any part of the body rots, darling, the person can't go on to live forever in the afterlife. Oh my God. Okay, so it's quite expensive to do this. So the pharaoh, of course, having all the money, he gets to do it, and so do some of the very rich Egyptians. But if you're poor, I'm afraid no mummification, no afterlife for you, darlings. But it's quite complicated, so let's begin, shall we? Stop it. Okay, so to mummify somebody, you lovely people, you will need a few things. First of all, where is it? We will need one of these, a ceremonial knife. Okay, this is a lovely flint knife, very sharp, called a slicer. And we need this to cut through the body and cut through all the fat and all the flesh and all the dirty stuff. Get it all out. This is called a slicer. You need one of these. Okay, secondly, you're going to need some bandages like this. Now, linen bandages in my time, darling, they're very, very expensive. Very expensive. Some families, they save their whole life just to get some linen bandages. So if you saved up, you get some of these, you can mummify something, darlings. Now, what else are you going to need? You're going to need these little tiny little things called amulets. These are like magical charms to guide you through the afterlife, darlings. And one of the most important amulets is called the scarab beetle. This will go directly on your heart and protect your heart in the afterlife, okay? You're also going to need some oils, and you're going to need some salt called natron, found at the banks of the river Nile. Okay, so first things first, children. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take this long hook, darlings, long hook, I know, outrageous, and we're going to shove this right up the person's nose, okay? Right up his nose. We don't believe the brain's important at all, but we got to get rid of the brain, okay? Because anything left in the body to rot, it's going to rot the whole body, and the person's soul can't go on to live forever in the afterlife. So we got to take the brain out. We're going to shove this hook right at the person's nose, pull it all out, darlings, and then we're going to move on to the next bit. Speaking of which, we got to get on with mummifying this chap here. So I've been busy. The last time I left you, I'd taken the brain out over here. So here's the brain. We removed it over here. Have a look at that lovely brain. We can get rid of that, darlings. Oh, it's gone, darlings. Now, a few other things we got to take out. We got to take out a few other things. Now, we don't believe the brain is important at all. We believe the center of life, love, and intelligence is the heart. The more to the heart later on. We still got to take out all the dirty, sticky, mucky stuff inside, though. So, let's have a look here. The first thing we got to take out is the intestines. So, let's have a little go, shall we? Pull them out one at a time. Whatever you do, people, don't be tempted to start flinging this around. It makes the place a real mess real quick, like. So let's get these out. There's the intestines. Now we're going to be taking the intestines and some of the other organs, put them in these jars. These jars called canopic jars. And we're going to wash them all up. We're going to put them in there, preserve them, and these will go with the mummy into the afterlife. Remember, we can't any part of the body rotten.
Canopic jars were made to store and preserve the organs that were removed from the body during mummification. The lungs, liver, intestines, and stomach. Each organ was protected by one of the 4 sons of the god Horus, and the jars were placed in the tomb alongside the dead body.
So, what other things we gotta do? We're gonna take the slicer again. I've already made a start for you over here. We're gonna take out the lungs. So let's take the lung out. One lung over here. There's one lung there. That's good, darling. We're gonna take 2, we got 2 lungs. Let's take the other one out there. Another lung over there. Very, very good, darling. Now we're also gonna take the liver out. Let's take the liver. There's your liver. Very, very big liver. We're gonna take the liver out over there. Very, very good. And we're also, I gotta take the eyes out later on. I don't like taking out the eyes. We don't see eye to eye. Oh, I'm outrageous, darlings. I'm outrageous. Here's some eyes out that I took out earlier. Nice. So, we gotta take the eyes out. Now, usually what I do with the eyes, I put a couple of onions in there and some peppercorns up the nose. Why onions? Because we believe it stops helping rotten, and the peppercorns up the nose, that also helps. I don't know why peppercorns, but we put them up the nose.
Onions were sometimes placed into the eye sockets of mummies. As well as having antiseptic and deodorizing properties, onions were also believed to have special magical powers, with their multiple layers symbolizing eternal life. Peppercorns were also used and were put up the dead person's nose so the mummy could sneeze, and begin breathing again in the afterlife.
Okay, so it normally takes about 15 days to wrap a body. 15 days with about 20 layers of bandages. That's quite a lot. So what else we got to do? Well, we're going to embalm all those organs in the canopic jars, but we got to remove the heart, darling, the heart. So, very important. Take the slicer, dig in, let's get back inside, and let's doing the heart. Back to Anubis. See you later, darling.
The ancient Egyptians believed that when you died, you had to pass through the dangerous and perilous underworld called the Duat, facing poisonous snakes and fiery pits. But by reading the correct spells from the Book of the Dead, these could be overcome. If overcome, you would then reach the gates of the fields of Yaru, the Egyptian afterlife. But first, you had to pass a final test in the Hall of the Two Truths. At the weighing of the heart ceremony, your heart will be weighed on a giant set of scales against the feather of truth, which held all the lies and bad deeds of your past life. The three gods, Anubis, Osiris, and Thoth, oversee and decide the results of the weighing. If your heart is lighter than the feather, then you went through the gates and were reborn in the afterlife. But if your heart failed, then you would be eaten by a monster called Ammit, the devourer of souls, and you are lost and destroyed forever.
This is a stela that would have been set up in the burial of this fellow, and his wife is pictured there. We've got like a daughter as well.
What is that? I don't know what that is. What is it?
Yeah, it is. It's like when I think it's a bit like when you might put a headstone or something like that at a burial. So it marks who the person was and that sort of thing. So it's showing who he was, but it also puts these hieroglyphs that are a set of prayers or spells, depending the way you would interpret it, from the Book of the Dead. So it's to do with his offering into the afterlife.
Is this a very... And these hieroglyphs, are they very personal to him?
No, they're not personal to him. It is kind of a standard verse. But sometimes it'll have the person's name, or most often the name will be there somewhere, but the rest is like a standard thing. But let me tell you a bit about the hieroglyphs for a minute. So if you're looking at the hieroglyphs, you can see they're sort of in rows horizontally, a bit like, we'd read in a book or something like that. Now the question is, am I reading from right to left, or am I reading from left to right?
Well, the thing is, I don't know if you're taught this in class, and this is the only bit I know about it is I thought they could be read any way, but you're going to tell me they can't be, is that right?
That's kind of a bit of it's sort of right and sort of not right. So each inscription will have a direction that it will be read in, but they could be written right to left, or they could be written left to right.
Okay.
And then we think there might be some magic spells that sometimes have one line written one way and one written another.
Why's that?
Maybe to hide the spell. You've got to remember, none of us were around, thousands of years ago. So as archaeologists, we put together evidence and we look at things from places and read and that sort of thing, and try our best to get the right information. But one little hint I can give you with this one is, if you see there's lots of birds. I like to look at birds, they're easy to look at.
You see those birds? Can you see those birds? They're brilliant.
Where they're looking at is where the direction will commence or start. So here we're reading from right to left, each row right to left.
Oh, I see. Is that the case with, is it always birds that are doing it, that give you the clue, or is it?
Yes, I mean it's any of the animals. In fact, there's a little person there as well who is also facing in that way, if you see what I mean. Their shoulders and so forth, and head is that way. The birds are the ones that you can just see so plainly because they're on the side.
Okay, I don't know if any of you can do this. I can't do this. Maybe Amanda can do it. Maybe she can't. Let's test Amanda. This is Test Amanda. Okay, now Amanda, can you read some of these hieroglyphs? Do you know what some of this is saying?
Yes, okay. Look, I do. I have learned it, and I haven't done it for a while. So this is the offering formula, and it would be an offering we give to, and it names the god and names the place, and then just in here we actually get the offering of objects. And I don't know if you can recognise, there's like a little duck head just towards the end here. And so indeed this is what it is. It is food, and it is linen, and it's things you might eat or things you might use in the afterlife.
Why was you're saying about these offerings? So in terms of belief and everyday, life and death and how they affected them, why are they Why are they offering things? What they're putting stuff in their tombs. This could be the most basic tomb, or the tombs, famously Tutankhamun, but obviously lots of other tombs are available. And why are they putting stuff in there? What is that for? What are they trying to do?
It seems that there was a suggestion that just what you enjoy in this life, you want to enjoy also in the afterlife.
And what was it? How did they see the afterlife? What was it? Was it Egypt?
Yeah, it's hard to sort of say like that, and it's hard to say.
Haven't been there.
No, that's.
And back now with more mummification fun and facts with me and Izzy in the studio.
There's different sort of types of being a mummy, and different kind of, depending on the money you had, the money for the mummy. I actually just read something the other day. This is quite gross, really. It's a very cheap version of doing it. I think it's to do with cedar oil or something. And I think they put it up someone, from around the back. Let's put it that way, kids. And they squirted it all up there, and it turned all your organs into basically mush, and then it just drained them all out. And that was kind of fairly cheap way of doing it in that sort of sense. But obviously, you've got grades depending on the money you have. What were sort of some of the other things that you could do, like, for starting down here, sort of going up a little bit? What were the sort of grades of mummification?
Your lowest grade is you bury them in sand, and that is like if you're majority probably of ancient Egyptians, that's what they did because they didn't have the cash. Because if you think about the amount, even just the wrapping, how much that would have cost, that's a lot of linen, all have to be made by hand, of course. So it's all, very expensive. But there's also, I could tell you, I really want to tell you this story because it just popped into my head.
Yeah.
We mentioned Thoth, right? Yeah. A bit later on, so like 800 BCE, right? Thoth had this cult, right? And they basically, in order to go to his temple, you had to bring with you an ibis. Makes sense, he's got an ibis head. And you have these people, because obviously not anybody can go out and catch an ibis, mummify it perfectly and bring it to the temple. So you'd go to someone and say, can I have your ibis, please? Can I have a mummified ibis? And they go, sure, mate, here you go, here's your mummified ibis. And some of them, beautifully mummified ibises, absolutely perfectly done, with tiny bandages, just so cute in its sort of own sort of little way. And some of them are a load of ibises, which aren't ibises. They look like an ibis from the outside, but you rip into the bandages and it's just someone's lunch. They really didn't give it.
And then moulded it into a shape.
Exactly, that'll do. Doesn't matter. Just their old rubbish, bits of old pot, that sort of stuff. Exactly. So presumably you got the same sort of thing happening with ancient Egyptian mummies as well. So it's we're talking like, people who had a lot of cash got mummified properly is basically what it is. I mean, and when you're a pharaoh, Tutankhamun, he had like 3 different coffins. One of them was just like beautifully ornate and painted. The other one was covered in like a thin sort of thing of gold. So it was heavy. And then the inner coffin was solid gold.
That's incredible, isn't it?
The amount of money. So you do sort of get the sort of different levels. And obviously they mucked up Tutankhamun's burial. They mucked it up. Yeah. They didn't, right?
Explain what they did. Go on.
Okay, so Tutankhamun, right? Weird, because he dies really young. Max he could have been was like 20 years old. Okay, so he's been pharaoh for a maximum of 8 years, which meant they probably didn't have anything ready for him. So he was probably in somebody else's little tomb, which is why we couldn't find him for ages. Anyway, point is, when his mummy was odd. Because one, right, the 3 coffins layer, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Because we don't see it very often, because usually thieves have got there before archaeologists have. Exactly. But he's got no heart.
Is that right? Wow, I didn't know that.
He's got a missing heart. And it's been done. His mummification, the actual mummification of the body itself, looks like it's been really botched. Basically, the guy who found him, I'm just doing a thing with names at the moment, but the guy who found him got the blame of it, saying, he wasn't looking after this right, and he all got bashed around and that sort of thing. But really not. He wasn't very well preserved at all, and he was missing his heart, which makes a lot of people think, 'cause he did have a bone break in his leg, and people were thinking that maybe he basically died in an accident somewhere very far away, and they had to quickly do their best to mummify him as best as possible. He was covered in this oil. You've mentioned an oil. I don't think it's quite the same oil that you were talking about, but he's covered in oil to help preserve him. And the thing about this oil is, if you leave it, and you just leave it, and you don't let it dry properly, or so there's this chemical reaction that can happen if you don't do it properly, you do it very quickly, where it can combust, which means it can catch fire all by itself. And weirdly,
when they're in the actual tomb itself, you mean? So it's actually
when it literally he caught fire for a short amount of time.
Wow, that's unreal.
He's burnt. It's so weird.
That's it. But his mummy is that white? Because it's sort of black, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's because he's burnt.
That's fascinating. That's amazing.
And if it's not got enough oxygen, it just stays in there and smoulders and crisps up, which is probably what happened. That's why he was so stuck to the inside of his own sarcophagus.
Crispy King Tut, lovely. There we go.
Do not eat any mummies. People have done that though. Victorians did that. They ate.
I know there's a lot of. I mean, what was going on with that? How was it exactly meant to help in the afterlife?
The idea is, and very, very basically, okay, guys, the idea is that Anubis, you die, sad times, but Anubis takes you through like this obstacle course of different stuff, depending on who you are and what it is and that sort of stuff. Takes you on an obstacle course, you meet a few gods, you say the right spells to them, you say the right spells to the other gods, everything's fine. You finally get to like the big boss at the end of the video game level, which is the Hall of the Two Truths, which is like a court. Right, you've got Osiris as the judge. He's there. Isis is behind him. You've got all the gods in there, like jury, sort of there going, Right, you've got Thoth writing everything down because that's what Thoth does. He's a wise man. And you've got the scales, which is like a measuring scale. So you've got one side, you put your heart, and then the other side is a feather. And this feather represents the goddess Maat. M-A-A-T, Maat. I just like to go, Maat. Right, Maat. Exactly. Right. So Maat is the god of, it's kind of not like the god of goodness or the god of justice, but the god of order and the right way, but not necessarily the good way, but the right way. So this feather represents sort of like good, but not as in good.
Literally.
Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like justice. Right? And also, if you have a look at some of the pictures of this, you've also got this little creature down at the bottom. This little creature is Ammit. He has got the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the back legs of a hippo.
Got some strange parents.
It's just like, and Ammit loves, his favourite thing is to eat human hearts.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if Ammit eats your heart, you are gone forever. There is no, they call that the second death, and there's no coming back from that. So that's the worst thing that can happen to you.
They literally disappear.
Yeah. There is no heaven and hell in ancient Egypt. There's only the afterlife, and you either get there or you don't. And if you don't, Ammit gets your heart because he's a good boy. He loves you.
Right? He's got to eat. But you mentioned this, so they're in the weighing of the heart, and if they get through, they get through, live a good life and stuff. You mentioned about the spells and stuff, and the Book of the Dead. And people tend to think this is just like a book called the Book of the Dead, and you just open it up.
Basically, the Book of the Dead is what we give the words for all of these different spells, which are basically like cheat codes in order to get through. I was going to say, are they like sort of spiritual sort of cheat codes in terms of
Exactly.
And they could literally be written on a scroll, which is often referred to as the Book of the Dead. They could be written on the inside of a coffin. We've got coffin text, also part of the Book of the Dead. That's kind of what we're talking about.
What they wrote, were they personal?
Yeah. They were personalised. Your name was very important to ancient Egyptians. It's part of your soul. So it's very important that you have your name on stuff.
There's other stuff in there with them, so like from, as you were talking earlier on about if you were sort of poor, you might just be buried in the desert sand, but they still had some objects with them, didn't they, that they found. But then you're going up to the sort of Tutankhamun level of like whatever it was, 5,000 or some incredible amount of stuff.
Like, he had, I think it was 120 pairs of underpants. 120 pairs.
Well, I would say that's healthy.
That's very healthy.
And he's there a long time. But was there a washing machine? There's no washing machine in there. It was there.
That's true. He had Shabti dolls though. So Shabti dolls are these little dolls. Yeah, which have your name on them again, because it says when somebody asks my name, I will go off and do this thing. So they'd probably wash his pants for him. But it's nice that he. Maybe it's just one very lazy Shabti doll that he didn't trust to do like a pants every day, and it is forever.
You're the eternal pant washer. That's
exactly.
Not a great name. Not a job title, is it? You don't want that. You don't need that.
No, you don't. But if you're poor and you can't afford Shabti dolls, that's what you're doing.
Oh, dear.
I mean, I like their idea of the afterlife, because their idea of the afterlife is just basically this life, except no disease, no arguing with your sister. Everything's quite chill. And you still have to work and you have to feed and all the rest of it, but it's not as bad. And you've got shabty dolls to do stuff for you, so it's fine.
Do they see the afterlife as literally sort of like a much lovelier version of just ancient Egypt? Was it the same sort of thing in that sort of sense? Yeah, it was.
But because it was ancient Egypt, it would seem to be very important to be buried in ancient Egypt. So there's a lot of, we have like graves of soldiers all sort of buried at the same sort of time, because presumably they died abroad and they were brought back to be buried in Egyptian soil, because that was seen as very important. And part of the reason there isn't this sort of massive ancient Egyptian empire, because nobody wanted to die abroad. Everybody wanted to be brought back and buried in Egypt. The point is that history is way more fun than even your own imagination, because they are weirder than you can possibly imagine. And this is a story where, you know, every time you go into a place and you see something, that is what you would have seen. If you go down into a tomb, which you do, the amount of steps that you go down into is the amount of steps you would have done. So I'm as historically accurate as what I pride myself on as possible. So if you're into wanting to know what it was like in 1249 BCE, this is the book for you.
That's fantastic. Izzy, thank you so much.
This is a really spectacular cabinet here. You might think, it looks like there's a lot of sort of similar repeated things. But what I draw your attention to here are these round, rather sort of brown, just dirty looking things.
So I'll ask you the question. What do you think these are, first of all, kids? You might think plate, maybe you think frisbee. But what actually are they? Tell us about what they are. And what's this got to do with their sort of everyday life and their sort of
Now
beliefs
this
and stuff?
is a lot more everyday. We've been looking at some quite special things to do with, you know, pharaohs and kings and that sort of thing. But these would be a bit more everyday. So these are actually objects that came from one burial. They're grouped together like that. So it was
So these are all in someone's tomb?
These represent a whole set of different people. Wow. But what I'm sort of saying there is one little group was in one tomb. And those things we're looking at are actually mirrors.
Wow.
Now, they wouldn't have been mirrors quite in the sense that we think of really being able to see very sharply with glass, because they're not glass. They would have been highly polished, these metal, and you would have sort of seen an image. But these are from burials, and what's really fascinating is the placement of where these things go in the burial. So these were in burials where the person was lying down a bit like, sort of like you do as a baby, a sort of a curled up position, and the mirror was often sat just in front of the face.
Why is that? Do we know why?
I don't know, but I mean, you've got to wonder, because that's where you look, isn't it? I mean,
but it's also really interesting is that, you know, there's a lot of similar objects that they're all taking with them, you know, which is really, really strange, isn't it? I mean,
so we have these little pots as well. I'm just trying to think if there's
something about a baby here. What's that?
a little coal pot.
Unnamed pregnant woman, very young, and a baby as well. There's a baby, something to do with a baby, not
and a baby as well.
That's incredible. And this is 2000 BC, so this is over 4,000 years ago. Come this way.
So one of the things I really love, if you come here to the museum, you know, have a look for some of these little signs and little extra information. And there's two really great bits of information here. So that's showing you what I was actually referring to. So that's where we believe that the person, in this case a woman, in that sort of curled up position, and then those little things are showing where the objects were in the burial.
Well, this is found in the desert. I mean, these people, were they actually in tombs? When you think of it like a tomb, you know.
I think this is desert and tomb go hand in hand in Egypt.
But I mean, under the sand. I mean,
but it's like not like a fancy tomb like you'd think of with Tutankhamun.
This is more of an everyday.
It is a little bit more like that. But
3,500 BC.
So this is from a notebook from the excavator, and this is how it would have been found. And that's what's kind of important about this, is to put it back into its context of how it was found.
Okay, come this way. More pots. There we go.
You can't see the writing so clearly on this one. It's quite sort of faded.
Can you see that a bit?
But a really, really special thing, and this is what, you know, we have referred to as a letter to the dead. So this is actually a letter from a woman to her husband who has died and talking to him in the spirit realm and so forth. So just a really beautiful thing.
So this is this like an offering bowl or something? What is it?
Well, we don't quite know from that way, other than it was a way that she was physically writing something to someone who was obviously no longer physically there.
So I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because, as I said, you see the pyramids famously, and all these statues, and all these pharaohs putting their mark on the land, and statues of gods and everything else, and we've seen those, and they're impressive. But for me, when you see something that personal and that simple, that's it's definitely equally as impressive. Sometimes in certain ways it's more impressive, isn't it? Because it's so personal. They're not trying to,
That's right.
The pharaohs are trying to sort of prove something, show something. This person's not trying to prove or show anything. They're just putting their heart on a piece of pottery, and we can see it all these years later on, which is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know a time for this?
Yeah, so we've got first intermediate period. So that indicates that it's a period in between dynasties, actually.
Yeah.
A time when the rulers were not as clear.
So this is getting closer to the pyramids.
That's right, it's
built in the
older.
famous pyramids that are still there now. Yeah, so that's about 2,160 sort of BC. So
in the order of 4,000 years ago.
This thing. So 4,000 years ago, this woman's husband passed away, and she wrote that. That's incredible, isn't it? Amazing. There we go. And that's it for today's Mr. Dilly History Live Ancient Egyptians. It needs me to say a huge thank you to Amanda. We're going to give Amanda a big round of applause. Thank you very much, Amanda. And all here at the Petrie Museum. The Petrie Museum is open. If you can, come down and visit. A big thank you, of course, to Iszi Lawrence as well. Her book, The Cursed Tomb, is out now for your reading pleasure as well. And just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching. To you all in your classrooms today, my name is Mr. Dilly. This has been Mr. Dilly's History Live Ancient Egyptians. And it's goodbye from me. And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.